have the same relationship. We're approximately we're nearing year 20. I don't know if we're in year 20 of a 30-year agreement with them. And as you know, they provide us with about 70% of our water with an interconnection from Glastonbury. And then we do all of the sewer ourselves. The one area that I think you should look at when you look at the rate analysis is the way they charge for sewers is an ad valorem tax, which is a tax based on grand list as opposed to usage. We base the sewer fee on usage as to the water that's used. And if you are not a water user, there's a base that we use for those. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 customers that are only on sewer and not on public water. So that's something I would have questions about, because I've already prepared for that. And you've probably read some of the information in the newspapers recently about, the vast improvements that MDC is doing for their sewer system in other parts of the state.
Is there anybody else there that we need in order, like, for example, would Rick be there, would others?
Yes.
So we'd have to hold.
And I would invite members, particularly from the engineering team of Metropolitan District Commission. Susan Negrelli is their head of engineering, and I would hope she could come. I don't know if Scott Jellison would come. He has been in communication with us all through this process, and I think he would be interested in coming. So I can't promise you what the date would be, because I think it's important that he be here too. He's their CEO.
This would be something that long-term capital would want to be involved in too?
Yes, absolutely. They're aware of this. I don't know that we made copies of those books for all of them. I know Water and Sewer Commission will be here. And then 3 members who had been involved in the interconnection in the late 90s and early 2000s, I also gave copies to them. There's 3 members in addition.
Susan, do you think it would be a good idea if we invited Jimmy Lynch? He runs the sewer department.
Sure.
He could probably answer technical questions, or.
Yep, absolutely.
I would think somebody hands-on it would be able to give us a lot of
Absolutely, yes,
insight.
and William could come to, William Lynch.
Yeah. He does the water, right?
I believe Rick gave them copies. We had many of these copies made that we paid for.
And would the intention of the meeting be to make a final decision on it, decide which way we're gonna go, or is it just information only?
I would anticipate you would have to digest the information that you get. I don't know that you can make a decision that night, frankly.
I wouldn't
This is a
think that.
big issue, and it would certainly go to, I would anticipate a town meeting, or a referendum.
Okay.
This is not something you're gonna solve quickly.
It's a big deal.
It's probably a series. What I had suggested, and Public Works Director felt a little differently, I had suggested that we have our own workshop, whereby everybody brings their books, we look at it, maybe we have staff here, and then we have the MDC.
That's a good idea.
And the people from the Tie and Bond, and Ben happened to be in the office at the same time, and Rick disagreed with me, and he thought that you should have the presentation from Mr. Mueller first. So, you might want to think about that a little bit, I don't know.
Right, I thought maybe we should get together, come up with our own questions, then have it, but like Susan said, Rick's position was, you need them first to even understand this. I think, am I saying it kind of what he was implying?
Yes.
I would think that, I would agree, I think it's better for us to almost look at it, digest it, and maybe kind of clarify some of our questions when they get here. Is that, you're saying the same thing?
If you're asking Susan for, an earlier meeting where we all get together or something, I wouldn't be opposed to that.
Yeah,
Obviously,
I think.
any time we discuss it, we're gonna probably learn more.
I can try for your December meeting to just have that item on the agenda. So it gives us another month to review your reports. And in the same time, I can see if there's a mutually agreeable date with MDC. Because it's not gonna happen right away to try to get all these people here at the same time. So I don't know that there's any harm for you to look at it and perhaps come up with some questions, and then I can give that to Ty and Bond, who did the report. I'll look to you as to what you want to do. You are the water and sewer authorities for the charter.
I'll do it everyone. I would generally think I would want to just hear from them first and see what they have to say instead of, but whatever you guys want to do is fine.
What do you want to do?
think they're end up being pretty close together anyways. I'd say we talk about it, review what we have, maybe come up with some questions ourselves, and then we'll meet with those guys soon afterwards. But again, I'm not strong on either side, this really matters. Depends on scheduling too, when we can get them together.
My feeling is, for me, in the way I learn, that it would be helpful for us to meet and identify some of those areas where we feel we're incompetent or lacking the knowledge to even formulate good questions. However, part of me feels too that there should be some town staff available for that.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if they would make themselves available. I think we then wouldn't go into the meeting with the folks in an uncomfortable way. We would have a level of comfort where nothing would be brand new or totally out of our grasp. And I have looked at it too, way too technical for me. It's like, yes, what are you really saying?
If you look, I'll draw your attention to some of the charts that are in the back that
Uh-huh.
you open out. And I spoke with Rick Kelsey and asked that some of those things that can easily be done, not a lot of cost. There's some things where it involves signage, it involves some eye wash stations, things of that nature, that we do those things.
Uh-huh.
Safety-related things that aren't of a great cost, and he agreed. So he's starting to work on some of those
Okay.
things. And those are the kinds of things that we could talk about. You know, and certainly you don't have to make it long. But I thought the first meeting in December would be soon enough. And then at the same time, I'll work on some dates, and Michelle will help me to get some dates. Fred, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I do not have a strong feeling either way in regards to which comes first. I can see if we do get together as a group prior, then you do get you're focused on it, and you start talking a little bit about it amongst ourselves and other people. So then when we hear the presentation, we will be, as I'm thinking about it, a little more informed. But either way, I can certainly agree.
I hope they're gonna be close together.
Yeah, if I can make a
Ben?
suggestion, the December meeting, from what I'm hearing, why don't we try to invite town staff?
Yeah, I will.
Have a quick meeting, hit all the highlights, try to educate all of ourselves a little bit more.
I'll
on
invite
that.
water and sewer too.
They should.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would think the more
And
the
the other
merrier,
members
yeah.
that I had asked to review this report.
One other thing, Susan, I do think as you look at this, this is a rather a major issue, so I'm thinking, we're gonna be talking about this on many occasions, and that, 6 months out, we'll still probably be dealing with it. So, that's how I look at it.
I'll highlight for you, there was a water main break on Spring Street again,
Mhm, yep.
this week. Some of you may have seen it. It did occur during the day, so our town crew got right on the break and repaired it before 4 o'clock. And the next day, spent some time, I think it was actually Friday, and then on Monday, did the repaving that needed to occur. So our apologies to the homeowners in the area. We try to avoid these things, but they're, as you can see, other towns, I know Middletown had quite a break recently too. This one was nowhere near that size, but it's
Was-
unfortunate for our customers, so.
Was that
Tom,
break, Susan?
Excuse me.
Was that in the same area that the new?
Just below,
Oh, just below it, okay.
that big bad one that we had. Tom, did you want to make a comment?
Just, normally that meeting, we hold a fourth quarter transfer for the audit purposes. Try to investigate it before that, or sit down and have a special meeting to get that accomplished, but that would need to get definitely done before the issue due to December 31st.
Well, we should be able to do both. But we'll try to keep other items at a minimum. Okay, so that's how we'll proceed, and I'll get back to you as to dates, and we'll schedule something for that first meeting in December. Are you okay with that fee, or do you not want to spend it?
Fine.
Don't want to spend it, but I think we have to.
I concur with Fred.
I
I concur.
concur with, you concur.
Well, I don't wanna invite someone if you're not gonna pay them.
We're gonna pay.
Frankly.
I think we
That's
should
why
pay
I'm
them.
asking, I need your consensus. I need it recorded.
I say we pay it, and we just ask them really good questions.
Yes.
Great.
So the consensus is, Laura, that the selectmen agree that we will pay the fee to have a meeting with the Ty and Bond engineers at a particular time in the near future. Okay, the first item, we have 2 land donations, and we have some members of the Field family with us, but before we get to that, there's also a land donation acceptance from Wesleyan University on Portland Cobalt Road. And as I was preparing for tonight's meeting, I realized that there's a typo on your green sheet, so I tried to line out and wrote in Portland Cobalt Road. It read Maple Avenue. And it's, whereas Wesleyan University owns a certain piece or parcel of unimproved land situated on Portland Cobalt Road, Route 66, containing by estimation 0.85 acres designated in the assessor's files as map 7 lot 3, and that is attached. And whereas the subject property is adjacent to the Eversource-owned property where the airline trail extension will be established, now therefore be it resolved, upon recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, 8-24 referral for land acquisition, the Board of Selectmen hereby accepts the donation of this property located on Portland Cobalt Road from Wesleyan University. And I'll read from Bruce Tyler, Chairman, Planning and Zoning. At a meeting held April 7, 2016, Portland Planning Zoning Commission voted to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the acquisition of a parcel of land on Portland Cobalt Road, Route 66, that is to be donated to the town. Planning and Zoning Commission application number 15-15, 824 referral for land acquisition, Portland Cobalt Road, application Town of Portland, property of Wesleyan University, assessors map 7 lot 3, zone RR. And the reasons, the subject property is adjacent to the Eversource-owned property where the airline trail extension will be established, and is also in an area along Route 66 which is problematic for development due to the ledges and existing slopes. The acquisition of the parcel is consistent with the planning goals of the town, and should there be any questions, contact the Land Use Department. Sincerely, Bruce Tyler, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission. And attached to the resolution is the strip of land that Wesleyan is donating to the town.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Fred. Discussion. I will note that the selectmen had previously been apprised of this and are aware of this, so it's not the first reading. Any discussion? There being none? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, motion carries. The next item, and as I mentioned, we do have members of the Field family here. And this also has been discussed previously many times. Whereas Arthur and Mark and Deborah Field, Beverly Piers, Lori Kogut, and Steve Cardarelli own a certain piece or parcel of unimproved land situated on Maple Avenue, containing by estimation 24.8 acres, designated in the assessor's files as map number 11 lot 6. Now therefore be it resolved, upon recommendation of Planning and Zoning Commission, 8-24 referral for land acquisition, the Board of Selectmen hereby accepts the donation of this property located on Maple Avenue from Arthur and Mark and Deborah Field, Beverly Piers, Lori Colgut, and Steve Cardarelli. And attached is the 824 stating at a meeting held August 4, 2016, Portland Planning and Zoning Commission voted to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the acquisition of a parcel of land on Maple Avenue that is to be donated to the town. PZC application 15-21, 8-24 referral for land acquisition, Maple Avenue. Application of Town of Portland, property of Arthur and Mark and Deborah Field, Beverly Piers, Lori Kogut, Steve Cardarelli, assessors map 11, lot 6, zone FP. Reasons, the acquisition of the parcel is consistent with the planning goals of the town. Should you have any questions on the recommendation, feel free to contact Land Use Department. Sincerely, Bruce Tyler, Chairman. And I will note on your map that the 24 plus acres are contiguous to land that is already owned by the town. And generously, the family has decided to donate it to us so that we will have contiguous land along the Connecticut River. And it also connects to Nolan Field, which is where our softball field is, and that's located off of Maple Avenue and also Airline Avenue, just for your reference. I'll also point out that through our attorney, we have taken out title insurance. It's something that the town selectmen had asked me to do. So we do have title insurance, and I have a copy with us, just in the event that we feel that we should have that. And the actual land description is in here as well. I thank the family for their patience on this. We've been working on this for quite a while, and doing our homework, and I appreciate their patience. I'll also point out, before you make the motion and second it, that I have agreed to work with the family and to locate in an appropriate location, whether it's near the land, or it's in our park, or near town hall, that will identify the story behind this land. Is it cattle that horses that used to come from Middletown. Do you wanna tell us just a brief story?
Sure. Since I'm the oldest in the group. My grandfather and his brother, the original owners, they owned Field Bakery in Middletown. And the horses that would come from, that were sort of old, that used to belong to the fire department, would then be bought by the Field Bakery. And they would be used to take bread and deliver throughout Middletown down into Higgins-Port and in the area. And at the end of the day, those horses would come and be grazed at that area. So it was basically a place for the horses to be free and to, rest after a long haul. And it was going on for many, many years. I have all the dates and whatever. So, I think it's kind of a special place in that it has a connection. And my grandfather and his brother, as I said, had it for a very long time until the 1929 crash, when Field Brothers Bakery left Middletown out of necessity. And so anyway, the land stayed the way it is, of course, since the crash. We've been paying taxes on it since the crash. We spent a lot of money on it. And those horses never were there anymore. But anyway, so it would be nice to have it, I think, as a sign that, indicated, I mean, it's kind of a connection between Portland and Middletown.
Nice history, and this being our 175th anniversary year, it's nice to have the donation recognized this year in celebration of your family's history. I'll work with you as well as your family members and our historical society. We are we are preparing some other informational signs on some other historic aspects of our town, so I think this would fit in nicely. And we'll keep in touch with maybe Lori, since she lives close by, and you can keep in touch with Ms. Pierce as well, and Mr. Cardarelli and others. So, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Further discussion or questions?
I just need to disclose that I've known Beth Pierce for a long time.
That's a good thing.
It is a wonderful thing. It was nice to see her
And
again.
I
this
know
evening.
Lori, and one of your family members went to high school with my husband, Mr. Cardarelli, so, small world. Yeah. At Xavier High School. So, it's nice to be able to accept this, and we accept it with gratitude to your family, and we look forward to working with you on historical preservation of this great donation. I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have a copy of the motion if you wanted to have it, the resolution. This is the resolution, and this is the map. I have one for Lori, too.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay, the next item is not intended to be a vote tonight, but I wanted to bring with you another land donation of sorts. It's really a land swap. And I had talked with the selectmen about this in some of our executive sessions, because it does have to do with potential land acquisition, but there is no money involved. It's rather a swap. And this is on our quarries, and it's Hubby for Hire Company. And they have asked that we look at the plus section, which is the property to be transferred from the town of Portland to Hubby for Hire, HFH Acquisitions, approximately 2,646 square feet. And the property to be transferred from Hubby for Hire Acquisitions to Town of Portland, the area is approximately 2,926 square feet. And it will allow us to have another section along the quarry. You'll see where this hash lines are toward the back of his property. And on the opposite side of Brownstone Avenue, to get your bearings, is where the parking lot is, particularly for the Brownstone Exploration Discovery Park and our town park. And you would be able to cross, and they'll give us an easement right near Brownstone Avenue. You see that other area with the little dots? And that would allow people to walk along. There'll be a fence along there. And then you'll be able to walk along the quarry rim to the back, and then there's a fairly large amount of land there behind his property. We've walked it, we've talked to Brownstone Exploration Discovery Park. We'll probably have to amend our agreement with them in light of this change, because they would be utilizing this perhaps as part of their lease. Because they have a lease, as you may know, you have copies of the lease, from the quarry, they call it the quarry hole rim, and then it goes in. So this would be a slight change to that. And they have walked it, I've walked it, Rick Kelsey has walked it. But as I said, I wanted you to look at this tonight. There's no reason for you to vote tonight. I'll put it on a future agenda. And so if you have future questions, you should come in and ask.
Do we need Sean Hayes' permission to give away something he already has a lease?
He's aware of it, and we may. I think we may, and that's why I said the agreement with them will likely have to be slightly amended.
And we'll need an 824 on both, the give and the take.
Yes. Yes. This is not ready for a vote. So if you could hold on to it, or if you want to leave it with me, I'll hold on to it for the next time we meet. Okay. The next item is the monthly budget report with Tom Robinson.
So we have in front of you have your the budget revenue report. On page 1, you can see we're doing pretty good here on the current property taxes. Hopefully we'll have some another nice pump in January that comes in. We did receive our first segment of our educational cost sharing grant. Came in on December 31st. It's $1.104 million. So that was a nice added amount of money to the to come in for cash flow. Like we talked about before, revenue sharing grant had come in. Revenues are doing pretty good for most part. We're gonna we'll keep watching them as the building department's been busy in their area. Town clerk's been busy as well. So we had received a amount on the second page there from other revenue. That's more or less the amount we received from KERMA for distribution. When things go well for KERMA, they give out a distribution, and a good part of that is that money there. moving into expenditures, doing quite well so far throughout the year, knock on wood. We'll need to continue to watch elections, as it's been an important election coming up. I know that there have been numerous supplies that had to be purchased, some based on the change in polling location. So that the move there required some tables to be acquired, some like barrier stanchions, kind of like it, so to show that people know where they're going. As well as there's numerous election workers at this event. The other area I just wanted to bring your attention to that, we're probably going to have some overage in is the town council. We've had quite a few planning and development matters, zoning matters, and other some of these items where there's possible land acquisitions before they're actually acquired. There's some work that needs to be done. Some of these, so we're seeing a uptick in activity this year, and it's a good chance that will exceed its
What are those
budgeted limit.
numbers? What have we expected? What are the numbers? I know I can look myself. I just asking.
So far, at the so for labor, which we do have a bunch of negotiation going on, that's budgeted at 35. We're so far at 6,500. So we're doing quite well there. Freedom of information, we're at 2,000 budgeted. We're about 710. We've had a couple of freedom of information, much more on that than we normally do, but still doing okay there. General town council is 22,500 is budgeted so far, and this probably would be up through September at this point, is 13,423 has been spent. Planning and development is 30,000 budgeted. So far, 9,800 has been spent. And on tax matters, which relate to some foreclosures that we're working on, the 5,000 is budgeted and $3,600 has been spent. Okay.
I just want to point out something. There was a parcel of land on, what is the name of that street?
Wagon wheel, yes.
Wagon Wheel.
Yeah.
That for decades had not been transferred to the town. And on all of the planning and zoning minutes and information, it had always been stated that it would be transferred to the town for drainage purposes. And through town council, we have been able to finally foreclose on that property, and it is now in the town's ownership. Essentially a building lot that, when that was laid out many years ago, was determined that would be left as open space, if you would. So we now have it in our possession. It had been acquiring or been totaling taxes due, but we're not collecting the taxes because it actually should have been transferred to the town at the time, and there was some dispute. This is way before any of these selectmen's times, but I just wanted to report that that has become now in the ownership of the town as it had originally been.
Yeah, we've been working on that for a few years now, trying to get that accomplished.
And
As
these
it's,
things take a long time of work.
that was like showing it was a large receivable to us, but it was something that was never going to get collected, as well as it was supposed to be ours anyway a long time ago.
That's similar to the one on 66 that Bruce Tyler was adamant about getting torn down and taken, remember that 160 Marlboro, I believe it is? We did a similar situation there where the town ended up acquiring it. But on that one, we did the 824. Did we do an 824 on this new one yet?
I don't know that, that was required because it was a foreclosure.
It's if you're assuming you're going to be selling it, you don't need to
No,
do the
we're not
820.
selling.
If it's just going through the foreclosure process like the other properties, you're not taking title. If you took title, then you need the 824.
I'm not planning on development, you'd have to talk to planning and development with that.
We went through Carrie Olson's office on this, we'll check into that.
We don't have any, just since you mentioned foreclosures, we don't have any tax foreclosures pending, do we, or, that's not on the horizon, is it?
Tax sales, possible, yes, but we haven't done one yet.
That still comes to us, right, Susan, before that happens?
I'm sorry?
The tax foreclosures?
We're not planning on doing any right now, right, Tom? Those don't always come to you, no. If you want them to, we
No,
will.
usually don't.
Oh, I thought that was the
We did in the
situation
beginning,
that-
yeah, we did in the beginning. We have not, when's the last one we did, Tom? I think they all got canceled.
No, well, we did one about a fiscal year ago, and that carried for 2 fiscal years, so it was fiscal year, it started in fiscal year 15, ended in 16, and those brought in quite a substantial amount of money, yes. Yeah.
I would prefer that it comes to the
Sure,
board,
we'll
just
do that.
because I think that's something that, not that it is or anything, but I've
Yep.
seen in other towns where it gets abused, so I.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Yeah, we've always utilized a strong threshold.
Well, that's what we talked about at some point, so
Yes, we
maybe
did.
there's a threshold where it comes in, and
Yeah.
I thought, I don't know if we actually.
So
did.
one of the ones that, there's a couple, it is tricky, there's a couple of things that, one of them that's out there now, there's a couple of reasons why there's differences out there. One, when we first talked about it was, I don't think you guys wanted to be, it was gifted, it was with Susan as the person that made the call from my department. My department would make it with the tax office, so it wasn't necessarily on you guys, it was more of a collectible. You guys told us you wanted the town to collect the revenue, though therefore go after it and utilize this as a function of collecting. So that was why we don't really usually come to you with who we're gonna go after.
I may have been in the minority on that, but
Okay.
that was my.
I'm just saying, that's where we were, that's where we have been.
To the board.
One of them's out there that's right now, there's a tax sale reason where you would, we're trying to get into demolition now, right, and board up. That can cause a person to be tax sailed. And that amount, there's 2 ways to do a board up. There's one is if you lien it, then you do a foreclosure. Otherwise, you don't lien it, and then you do a tax sale. If you do lien it and do a tax sale, then you still can't you can't collect through the tax sale, but possibly after the tax sale you may collect. So those items come up, and now we have actually done one of those where the person appears to be gone, but we're going to give them the opportunity to try to pay the fee, but they're also very delinquent in taxes. So that would be a good example where would be I would have gone with a go on that one in the past. It can be brought to y'all. It's your call. On collection methods, I don't know if that's really where you want to go, but in the past it didn't seem like you wanted.
My only concern always has been, when we're going through that process, what kind of money are we talking about? There's a threshold, and I just don't think it should be done at a certain level. That was my concern. So, I'm not in favor of tax foreclosures for $623 or something.
No, we don't do that.
So
Tax sale, not foreclosure. Sale. Sometimes we have to go to foreclosure depending on the situation.
Sure,
The
sort
one
of
in
a
the wagon wheel, we
process,
had
but
to.
sure.
More of them are now tax saled, which is cheaper for you to do. And we've been able to acquire the taxes that are due to us. And that's what we had gone through a couple of
that's
years
what
ago,
I'm
Brendan.
talking about, I suppose. I thought it was a tax foreclosure sale, but maybe I'm using the wrong.
Well, what occurred there, and that was a different scenario than we'd ever had in the past. That was the
So
board.
you're not talking about that?
I'm
Is that-
talking about that. I'm talking what's called a tax sale, which
Yeah.
is similar to what you're talking about. Well, what transpired where there was a level of concern from you all was that you guys had told me to go hard after water and sewer. So when you all told me to do that, I lowered my threshold on water and sewer to I think it was, I got down maybe to, you might owe 4,000.
Sure. Sure, no, I understand that. I don't think I'm talking about that at all.
Okay, because that's where, that, otherwise, I mean, otherwise, the threshold is quite a bit higher than that. So I don't want to give away my
Maybe we
threshold,
figure- I
but.
suppose what I'm talking about is attorney, somebody from North
Oh, yeah.
Carolina or something.
No, we use,
We use Pullman and Conley, Adam
Coleman
Cohen.
and Conley, so that's what I'm talking about, that.
They're never to the threshold that you just said, it's always much higher than that, significantly.
That's.
I mean, it's significantly higher, but I don't want to.
I got you.
Yeah, there were only three of us, I think, here who were involved in that, Brian, Susan, and myself.
Right.
Kathy would have been if she's here. But I remember the discussion, and I think I was a little more on the hard line in terms of that discussion.
Too
But-
soft,
But what, as I recall, what we ended up with is, we didn't want to, in the cases where you had someone living in a property, whatever, I know Tom was involved in the discussion too, and if the amount of money involved was not a great deal, where the latitude that you would have in terms of trying to work that out was, I think, given by the board. That's how, I'm trying to think how I recall that. In other words, you have the latitude in terms of trying to work these situations out whenever possible.
Correct.
And particularly if there's not, not $30,000 involved or $40,000, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, I think where the override came of me would be, well, Susan would call, then we would go to the board. If it was, what I've always done is I bring a list of, I review it with my staff and my tax department and water department. We usually go through the various channels that we can. Before that, we've gotten to the level where people are not responding. They're either shut offs or they can't be shut off because they're owned by a landlord. So then the next move is to tax sale. At that point, we create the list, usually over a threshold. The threshold had been a reasonable number that we kind of talked about, but I think everyone thought it was reasonable. Adam Cohen had thought it was reasonable. Went a tax sale side, that's usually has no problem. I don't think I've ever had any concern about that. It was on the water and sewer side that some people thought I was maybe a little low. But again, it's hard because you can accumulate a very large, long unpaid balance in water and sewer and not be a substantial number. So what I was going off of was length of time maybe that you hadn't paid, where, it might have been a, a $200 a quarter deal. Maybe you haven't paid me in 16 years,
I understand all those considerations. I was just concerned, and it really is just coming from, I say personal experience, but knowing someone in another town who lost their home over a very small sum of money, and if the town just waited, they would have gotten their money.
Yeah, we don't do
that. So
And the way that
trying to avoid that sort of
the way that I do the tax sale is if it really went through that, when the tax sale occurs, the person gets 6 months to get their money
I
back.
understand.
It's not that foreclosure method. The two reasons we did the foreclosure was, one was under the bridge that was ancient that no one was around, and then this other one was this property in Wagon Wheel that had accumulated, I think it was like $70,000+ of receivable. So that's a huge receivable with no, and then there was substantiating documentation that in theory should have been our property. So, and then when it did come out that possibly we're going to tax sale, people that lived on both sides came out with stuff that this is what it was when I got my house, blah, blah, blah. You can't do this. And I was like, whoa, okay. Then I went to Susan, and therefore we got Martha involved. We pulled the push on. And we even told Martha that you can't do a tax sale. They wanted to do it, and we were like, no, we're not doing that. It's not how the people here wanted it, and that shouldn't be how it goes.
What's our policy on water, for example? Do we have a threshold to shut the water off? I'm not on.
It's usually arbitrary based on kind of when I review what I decide.
Should we have a policy of, just like any other utility, if you don't pay for so long, should it be shut off?
You gotta look at where, I feel you gotta look at what you're using it, how they're using it. I mean, like you say, let's just say for ha-has, you say they're $5,000. Well, there could be a guy that uses a $3,000 every quarter. You wouldn't want to knock him off at $5,000. Now, you could have a house that uses $100. Well, $5,000, you probably want a tax sale because they haven't paid. So, I
No,
think,
what I'm getting at is, well prior to that, pick a time frame when people don't pay their bills, we take their meter. At what point do we take the meter? What is our policy on, if you don't pay your water bill for 1 year in the town of Portland, do we not take your meter? Do we not, I don't know, I'm new to the board. But to me-
that's not, no, it's, again, like I said, a review the outstandings and we periodically take action.
And I get, everybody's gonna have different bills, and you're obviously the 5,000 scenario, the 100 scenario, but I would think in theory, if we picked a time frame that everybody, to me.
It's very
Am I missing
tricky to come up with exact methodology, though.
Okay.
Just to answer, Ben, and this probably isn't the best answer, but I went to the meeting when there was gonna be the tax, water and sewer increase, and there was a fair amount of discussion about people knowing people who were in arrears for a long period of time. However, some of that has to do with vacant landlords, and so the units are rented, the tax burden belongs to the owner, and really can't shut off the water to the renters. So kind of in a no-win situation. And do I agree with you that there should be a time frame where that happens and the onus then goes to the landlord to explain to his tenants why they have no water?
Yeah.
But, you know, when do we think about being humane and when do we collect the money? And there's gotta be a sweet spot for that to happen, but I think it's almost impossible to say what that is. I mean, do you tell the folks living in the house that on Friday your water's gonna be turned off? You know, and it's the landlord's responsibility, and he could live, or she could live in 3-5 states away. It's a tough situation, and I don't know, maybe there should be a policy developed that says after X amount of days, you know, your landlord's going to be notified, your water is gonna be turned off, and maybe everybody just gets on the same page and puts the pressure on. I don't know what the easy answer to that is. I'm not sure that there is an easy answer.
I know that Adam Cohen said that it wasn't a good solution to have any type of really collection procedures for water, sewer. You follow state statute. And that's kind of what we've been doing. We've been following what the state statutes allows us to do. We use parameters that are allowed so we can tax sale when we can tax sale. And that's kind of how we've been going at it. And you're getting 18% interest. It's a good interest rate. So if the people don't pay, you're getting them on the interest side. If they, you got liens on all the property, so when they sell, you're going to collect. There's a lot of options to get money. And like I said, it's what level do you want to, cut those people off and where they have no food or water for the 3 days and, until they can get money back up. I mean, usually you're telling the people in advance it's coming, even when you do that, but it's still, it's not a great thing for, it's our men have to go out into the field and, sometimes police have to go with them to make sure that the shutoffs can go well, so you're outlaying money on police private duty. Then a lot of times the people don't get home until we're closed, then there's no way to get in, or the director gets called, and, so there's a lot of trickery that occurs when you do the shutoffs. And we continue to push, and it's kind of where Tom goes when what area I can get into when I can get into it is kind of how I have to do it, because usually I'm involved in it when all these things occur. So, all right, guys, thank you.
Tom, I had one other question, not on this issue.
Sure, sir. Go ahead.
Very good. Yeah, just on page 9. And I was wondering if you knew, since the tree committee is now going to be active again with the addition of Brother Pelton. We had appropriated $20,000. Has there been any discussion with Rick, who's the tree warden, about plans for maybe some plantings, or whether we've been grinding any stumps? Any discussion on that, or I can pick that up with Rick, I suppose. I just was.
Grindings, I haven't heard a thing about grindings.
Not-
Again, this would be Rick's area of expertise, but I haven't heard anything about that. I know I see Asplin cutting a lot for Northeast Utilities, so I think we're kind of watching how that goes, because usually we use Asplin, so let's see what they do for Northeast Utilities before we go pay them more. I think is what the option there is. And then we did bring them in, I know at the end of the last fiscal year, and did a bunch of stuff that Rick had required to be done. And as far as plantings, I think the company that we used to do business with went out of business on the plantings, but I don't know of any other new plantings at this point.
Okay, well then, yeah, we'll pick that up, because we do have a program that we try to establish, which every year would involve some planting at least. The pruning, as you said, Eversource is, around town chopping things down. So the money that was set aside, at least part of it, my understanding was, would go, unless there were some unusual circumstances, towards some planting, and there has to be a plan. So we'll have to pick that up and talk with Rick about that too.
If you want to schedule a committee, let me know, and we'll schedule that for you and post an agenda so that you can have a tree committee meeting.
Okay.
We haven't had, he and I haven't had any discussion on that.
There's been no
recently.
discussion, yeah.
So I think it's time to have a committee meeting.
Thank you.
Anything else on monthly budget report tonight? Thank you, Tom. I did provide courtesy of Michelle. She went through all of the various appointments that we need in the boards and commissions. We traditionally have not had a building code board of appeals filled with members because they don't have a lot of work, quite honestly. So we have not traditionally filled those seats. The Conservation Commission has a regular seat vacant, as it does alternates. And Housing Code Board of Appeals is another one that we don't typically fill until there's a need to do so. There is, as you know, because we discussed it last time, a vacancy in ethics, a vacancy for an alternate in inland wetlands, a regular vacancy in library board. Planning and zoning has 2 vacancies as alternates, and I mentioned this to Michael because one should be from your party. Senior Citizens Advisory Board, there is a vacancy, as well as Youth Services. I know Ryan Curley had a person contact him, and he was sharing that, I think, with your party, Michael. Board of Assessment Appeals, there are the opportunity for 3 alternates, and those aren't typically appointed until they start their work, because the 3 elected members seem to be able to handle the work up until the point of the appeals. Within the blue sheet, you have, if you look, you have to look at this one very carefully, honestly, because what Michelle does is she keeps a running list. So when you look at the Board of Selectmen, you see that Carl, when he was elected, but of course, God rest his soul, he's deceased, and then Kitch is listed as number 1, so that's the slot that you're filling, Kitch. And then 2 is Brian, 3 is Fred, and then Kathy is 4, Michael, and so forth, then, number 6. Town Clerk, Board of Education, we had some resignations due to the election of Ben, so Sharon Peters-Gabala filled that seat. Andrea and her assignment date, along with Chris Darby. Gisela Rice resigned, and Dave Murphy took her seat. Mary Ann Rode is the chairman, Jim Tripp, and Tim LeBoy, and so forth. So I thought this would be helpful to you. This is the most up-to-date list. If you see any errors, let us know. And it will give you some opportunity to understand some of the many, many boards and commissions that we have and the many needs that we have for filling them. I don't think we gave you the committees. Don't know that we have any committees right now, other than committees for this board, Tree Committee and Sidewalk Committee.
Sidewalk and trees we have.
And we disbanded the Route 17 committee, so I don't think there's any other citizen, Airline Trail, is that in here?
Do you know offhand the,
Airline Trail is not listed.
I know somewhere I read it, there's a time frame if you don't have members for a
It's a year for a committee, Ben.
Did we hit that with the building code?
Because it's in the charter, it doesn't really dissolve. That's only for committees that this board assigns.
Okay, I knew I read something. so-
Yep, you're right. Committees, if they haven't met for a year, they're automatically disbanded unless you do so affirmatively. But if they're in the charter, they remain as boards. So with that, we'll move on to appointments to boards and commissions. Are there any appointments tonight?
Yes, I move to appoint Rosalani Ferguson to the Senior Center Advisory Board as active member.
Is there a second?
Second?
Rosalani Ferguson, Roselani, Ferguson, Ferguson.
All in favor?
Discussion.
Discussion?
Yep.
On appointments? Sure.
Yeah. Like I've said in the past, I think it's a good procedure for us to put names on the agenda, so everybody is aware ahead of time before the meeting. And I refer to not only the board, I refer to the public. I think that would be a good way to go about it for the future. Once again, I'm happy we have volunteers. This is nothing against any person. This is about the way we do things, and I still think, and I feel strongly that we should be putting their names on the agenda, so everybody has the opportunity to know ahead of time, and so that's my position.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Can you tell me a little bit more about it? I mean, I
I
know
can say
probably.
Rosalani,
Sure.
I used to make her pizza. She's a wonderful person.
She's a wonderful person.
She's a very, very nice person, that much I know about.
Yeah, I had reflected, because this came up last time, and I was thinking back, and since I at least have been on the board, that there really hasn't been a problem, and the system, that hasn't been broken. My rule is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And as I was trying to think back, if there was ever somebody who we rejected it, while I was on the board, and I can't recall anybody being rejected. Usually the votes are unanimous. So as I thought about it, I didn't think it was really necessary. It was based on my experience, just so you know.
Yeah, and I'll give you a couple examples. I talked to Brian O'Connor, and he also changed the Democratic Town Committee procedure on how they now appoint people. And I thought it was a wonderful idea. He now has them come in and essentially give an interview. They meet the candidate instead of just getting a name on a list, and I think that's a wonderful thing. I respect not broken, don't fix it. I can think of an example where this board appointed somebody to a commission, and I happened to not be available that night at the meeting, and I probably would have wrote a letter describing the relationship of this person to a pending application. So it's more about not us. It's more about the public and the townspeople having the opportunity, because the way we're doing it now, they don't have the opportunity to weigh in any way, shape, or form, other than just show up and you hear it at the meeting. And I just think there's a better way to do things. In a lot of other towns, like Old Saybrook, they put it right on the agenda, and I don't think it's a bad thing. And I think it would just help with transparency, and I think it would just be better. But
Yeah, no, you have an opinion, and I base mine on my experience, and I think there probably are some restrictions too in terms of the time when there are vacancies. I was trying to recall that. And by extending it, and then you have, let's say we extend it, and automatically you're pushing it out to the next agenda. Then let's say we have a situation where the next agenda is, the meeting is canceled, Board of Selectmen don't meet, the meeting's canceled. So now we're on 2 weeks, and, I don't know.
I can help with that. It would be a simple phone call. Susan can add it to the agenda on any appointment, and it can literally happen up to 24 hours on a regular meeting prior to the meeting. It's not like, and I get it, if it was gonna be a delay tactic or something to that effect, and it wasn't, I believe
us and anybody else that takes the time to look at the agenda, and the knowledge of who may be appointed to a position. And I think it gives us an opportunity to acquaint ourselves with that person.
Thank you. There's a motion that's been made and seconded, so we'll have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. How many voted yes? Did you raise your hand? 4? Noes? Abstentions? So motion passes for Rosalani Ferguson. Are there any other appointments?
Yes, I move to appoint Jeanette Hodge as an active member of the Ethics Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Same points I said before, so I won't talk long. Like I mentioned earlier, you never want to be in the position where if there's something pending, like this board's a perfect example, they have an agenda, there's 5 things, COM 16(1) through 5, and then there's a OA on the agenda.
What are you talking about, Ben?
On the
I'm not
Ethics
sure I know
Commission.
what you're talking about.
Ethics Commission, their agenda.
Okay.
Here we are talking about appointing somebody while there's things going on. Once again, I've heard wonderful things about this person. I agree with my party. This isn't about people. This is about procedures, and I think you have to be careful when you're putting people on board in the middle of a process. And I think no matter what the outcome is during that process, you could be labeled as interfering with it. So once again, I'm not comfortable, especially seeing that it wasn't noticed, it wasn't put in the, and it sounds like you've at least known this since the last meeting, and I asked at the last meeting for this to be added to the agenda. I thought it would have been a very simple line item to add a name to the agenda. Apparently, you disagreed with me because it's not on
I
the agenda.
didn't have any appointments when I made up the agenda. It did not come to me. As I told you, Kathy Richards is in charge of this, as is Michael Pelton. And I also want to point out that every board and commission has business pending all the time. This board has a tremendous amount of work. We had a person die, and we appointed someone to this seat. There is work that's always being done in planning and zoning. There's always work being done on conservation. There's certainly always work being done on Board of Education. To stop an appointment because there's pending applications or information, I don't agree. There's always work that needs to be done. The library board has many issues that they talk about consistently. Zoning Board of Appeals does. Every one of our boards and commissions, not just the Ethics Commission, the Housing Authority, that has its own rules and regulations, not only within our charter, but also within the state and federal laws as to who can be appointed. And traditionally, our commissions for the Democrats, I should say the town committee, and the town committee for the Republicans have interviewed people. And there has always been nominating committees, and there has been an engagement of the community as far as wanting to serve. And on occasion, this board has asked that I put vacancies in the newspaper, and people do contact my office, and then I give those to the respective political parties. We appoint people that are unaffiliated. I know that Kathy, speaking for her, she has appointed people that are Republicans as well as Democrats and unaffiliated, depending on the needs and the talents of people that put their name forward. And I think it's important to have a nomination process. And the nomination process sometimes falls apart because it's hard to get people to volunteer, not just for boards and commissions, but they also would have to serve to assist in their town committees. And it's very helpful when people have been doing this. This process has worked for decades. I don't want to see this board get into the matter of interviewing people or making comments about them in public. I don't think that is something I am comfortable with, and I've felt that the participation by members of this board and the respective town committees allows them to be very involved in the nomination process. And then a delegate to this board brings forward the report of their nominating committee. Now, whether or not then they meet is up to that commission. I know that it's been reactivated, and I can tell you for many years, the nominations committee was very active, because Tom Flood was always out there trying to get people to serve and interviewed people before they were nominated. So while there's always a better process, I just believe that the process we have, if we continue with it, can be very helpful. I don't want to do anything that would not encourage volunteerism. Maybe you'd want to go to a report of a nominating committee. I'm active on other boards and commissions. They typically, when there's a nominations report, which is really what we're doing, they don't put the person's name on there, but rather they present a report of the nominating committee. Now, whether or not you choose to vote that night on the nomination committee, that's typically a very respectful way of putting people's names forward. Maybe you wait till the next time to vote on a nomination report. I just want to make sure that however this board proceeds, that we do it with respect for those people that are volunteers. If their names go on agendas, and then there's a request that they be interviewed or background checks be done, I think that is better hosted by a nominating committee. And that's a typical way that many organizations, whether it's a PTO, whether it's a church or synagogue group, whether it's a civic group, a exchange club, that is the way nominations are handled. And I'd ask my fellow board members to think about a nomination process that would be respectful and helpful toward filling these vacancies. And also, I'm very grateful for the people that serve. And all that have served in the time I've been involved have done so admirably, and I'm very happy to be able to participate in the process. So I believe, I'm sorry.
I thought you
Yes.
were I concur. I think it's probably the ultimate compliment to have your name put on. I think it would be great for me to thank anybody that comes forward and wants to volunteer their time to help this town. I think it is done in many other towns, and it's a good procedure to follow. And I'm not quite sure what you think would happen if their name was on an agenda. In your position from the last meeting was there was an urgency to fill the vacancy on the Ethics Commission. Now you take the position that there's always work to be done. Well, no, the Ethics Commission hasn't had meetings in a while, and there hasn't been work to be done. And that's a complete change from the last meeting. And once again, I think it's a compliment. I'd like to personally thank people that come forward. This isn't about personalities. It's about, like Mike said, who is this person? Great example. But that would eliminate all that. And I don't see any danger in putting their name up. Maybe I'm missing something. Thank you.
What I meant was there's always work on various commissions and boards. And I reflect to you what people tell me. And what Terry Larson, a member of the Ethics Commission, had asked me is if this board could appoint someone. And there was a nomination process that did occur. So I was simply telling you that the request had come from the commission. And I can also tell you we have some other issues within boards and commissions. Sometimes people don't come to meetings. My office attempts to reach out to them and ask them if they still have an interest to be on the committee. There's one on one of our active boards that hasn't answered us, and we have an alternate that's willing to serve. So there's a lot of different things that certainly a nomination group can be helpful too. So thank you for your comments.
I just had one
Okay.
observation regarding the present person who's currently up for nomination. I've had a couple people ask me why that person wasn't appointed, because they were familiar with her and had heard about it, and were surprised that she wasn't. Which is interesting, because that obviously never occurred before, and they mentioned that they knew her personally and restated what, I think I stated the other day, that she had a good background and was was a good person, so.
Thank you.
And if I may speak to that, part of it is, here we are, all fully aware that there's something going on, there's an agenda for the Ethics Commission. Hopefully, somebody's informed this nice person who's volunteering her time that she's gonna be put on in the middle of the mix, and just like you, people have come up and said, you know, why would somebody wanna get on during a process? Is there something going on? So it's automatically, whether they're doing the right thing or not, you could be sending the wrong message by default. So you have to be careful and have to protect these volunteers, when, in all fairness, I would ask this person, you know, are you sure you're comfortable? Are you sure that you know these things going on? Because that's the
So do
reality.
you want to interview them?
Not interview, just say hi and, you know, ask a question or so. I don't
So
think-
you're asking that they come to the meeting?
I think that would be wonderful.
I'm not in favor of that. I don't want this board to get into interviewing people for committees in a major meeting like this. I'm not in favor of that. I'm in favor of a nomination process, which is what we have had for decades in this town. For decades, the town committees have served as our nominations group. They interview, they ask people to step forward, along with anybody. This is on our website. We try to keep it up to date. I will tell you, we need to do always a better job on keeping things up to date. If anyone is interested in serving, they should come forward. Every other committee and organization that I've been in always has a nomination process, a committee that interviews people, not a major public meeting where they would be grilled with questions or asked questions or even presented. That's not something we've done. I am not in favor of that. It's something that I think is inappropriate. Is there any other discussion tonight? I think there's been a motion made and seconded, Brian. All in favor of Mrs. Hodge?
Aye.
Aye. Who voted aye? 2, 3, 4. No? Abstentions? 2. 2 abstentions. Thank you. Are there any other appointments to boards or commissions tonight?
For me.
Thank you. Mike? Next is refunds of excess payments.
Move a refund of $381.34 to Jordan Bouchard.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And $13.91 to Raymond Sajak Jr.
Is there a second?
Second.
Kitch seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Anything on status reports? I have nothing. Public comment? No?
Norm Ward, a member of the Water and Sewer Commission. I just popped into, after my meeting, I didn't know this was coming up, but I can tell the board here that the Water and Sewer Commission, we're always on to get reports on our delinquency. We're always working with the director and Rick. I personally do feel we need to firm up our procedures. I agree with the comments I heard here tonight. If you've been delinquent, I don't care what you owe, if you haven't paid a bill in 2 years, shut you off. You have to set a precedent. Why should somebody be getting free water? And it's based on the time frame. It's not 2 months later or 3 quarters. You know, we get enough people 2-3 years out. As far as landlords, we've discussed it at our Water and Sewer Commission. Doesn't go very far, but I think it's a great avenue for us to look into. I've been told we're short man hours and we're short staff and cost. We could get into a rent receivership program. Yes, we can't shut tenants off, but we sure can go after and collect the rent that the landlord is getting? Why let him get his rent every month and not pay us for our water bill? His rent money will come to us. Is it a bid procedure? Does it cost money to do that? Yes, it does. But let's set that precedent. Let's go after some of these deadbeat landlords. And don't pay no water bill, it's fine. We'll take your rent. What's more important to the landlord? His rent money. Well, we can tap it. And I think we should. Why wait until he becomes such a deadbeat landlord and then he moves out and abandons his property? And what do we have then? We have nothing. We have a lien on the property. Now, that doesn't happen in all landlord situations, but I think we should look into this rent receivership program. And I think we could be a little more diligent on collections. Nothing just people to pay their water bill fast and then hearing that your neighbor got shut off for a delinquent water bill. At least people will call and make a schedule of payment. At least make an effort. Fine, we can relate to hardships and people lost their jobs and they lost hours, but at least make an effort. Pay us $5 a week. It's amazing how fast it adds up, and at least they're making an effort to pay their way. But I think we got quite a bit of improvement in that procedure. But we keep, Tom knows, we keep him on his toes because we're always asking for a report. We go through our report. We're paying in risk Kelsey's butt too. Because yes, we might be short-staffed or it might cost us some money, but we have to do it. It's just part of our everyday operating procedure, it should be. But rent receivership we should look into. That goes after the deadbeat landlords. You take their rent money, they might come around and pay some of their water payments sooner. The other thing I'd like to make a comment on tonight is appointments to commissions. I've been on a few commissions in town for years. And I'm glad I don't know people on this board somewhat, so I don't mean it personal against anybody, but if I was being appointed to a commission and I heard tomorrow that 4 people were in favor and 2 people were abstentions, I'd be a little concerned. I'm a dedicated town employee, or live in town. I volunteered to serve on a committee. My town committee has recommended my name to this board, and 2 people on the board didn't vote in favor of me serving on a committee. I've taken that personal. I can see your procedure and your paperwork, but don't take that out on somebody volunteering. But I would look at it that way. I had 4 in favor and 2 against. I know it's abstention, but the person, the layman, looks at it, I had 2 votes for and 2 against. And that's an awful message to send out to a volunteer. Because we just want to make our town better. That's why we volunteer. We're not doing it for kickbacks or money. We don't get paid. We're concerned, we want to make it a better place, and that's why we volunteer our time. So I think we should show a little more respect in that way. I know it's procedural, but don't take it out on the poor volunteer. Because I would. I'm simple. I'd say 4 were for me and 2 are against. Who were them 2 against me? Oh, I don't know them either. You know. Anyways, I think we should be a little bit more open about that. We say that if it's not broken, why fix it? There's always a better way sometimes, and we should always be looking for a better way to do things, no matter what it is. And I think if you get somebody appointed to your commission, they should come on anytime that vacancy's there. You need that person for whatever. You can't even get alternates. You need alternates. And they help you a lot. And you can get the wrong person on your committee. I can say as chairperson of conservation, over the 25, 30 years I've been involved, we've had at least 1, maybe 2 people that, why are you on a conservation commission? You definitely, you're Your beliefs and your benefits don't relate to us at all. But did it hurt us? No. We just had to work harder to get our point and show that person the benefit of why we want conservation. So it's a learning process. We should never turn somebody down unless there's a real valid reason. But the town committees would not recommend them to us, I don't think, if they knew that person just shouldn't be on any committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment tonight? Informal discussion?
Just a comment, please.
Yes.
Recognize there's a ball game tonight
Yes.
that some of us want to see. But
My
anyway.
goal was quarter of.
Yes, it's quarter.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that Main Street, I was happy to see that there are a couple of properties, I don't know what the motivation was, but on Main Street that have been fixed up, and it makes a big difference when you see some plantings and no vehicle in the front, and really a nice thing. Certainly.
I want to point out that Lincoln White, our building and blight official, has been working diligently with the owners of that property, and they've been very cooperative. It's been a good process, and that's the 90% of people that comply. I will point out, since you mentioned it, there was an application put to the state of Connecticut for a permit for a new driveway and parking in front of a house on Main Street. And the permit was issued by the state of Connecticut for a replacement driveway. And what occurred was the paver made an area of parking, or started to make an area of parking in front of the house. So we were notified by a citizen, and our zoning enforcement official and our land use administrator and other people within the town are working to take care of that. There was another situation on High Street where there was some parking in front of a house that was put in, and that too is in violation of zoning. So the zoning enforcement officer, Dan Beret, is looking into that as well.
Just for personal knowledge, so the application for the Main Street address, that goes through the state?
Yes.
Even though it was behind the sidewalk line?
Well, the application, Kitch, that was approved for a permit from the state of Connecticut, because it's entering the state highway, was for a replacement of the driveway. But when the state permitting official was informed as to what was actually occurring,
Okay.
they withdrew their permission.
All right, but the work was done anyways.
I don't believe it was paved. I went
Not
by it,
paved.
and I can't hear you.
Rip
I-
outs.
I'm sorry, one at a time.
So it was dug out. I actually, going by the morning that the work started, I thought they had an underground oil tank. And so I thought that's what was happening. Came back from work to see that a mini parking lot had actually been built, and 3 cars park in that area on a daily basis.
But Shirley, it's not paved, is that what you
It's
said?
not paved,
No,
it's
it's
stone.
not paved.
It's stone.
It's not, because the state withdrew the permission. So now there'll be action taken by the zoning enforcement officer as well as the state.
Okay, that was the only question I had for this time. I had a number of
It's
folks
happening
addressed me.
sort of as we speak, it's happening now.
Okay.
But there is, within our zoning regulations, no allowance for putting parking in front of your house other than that which would be associated with a driveway. In these 2 instances, there's parking in the front of a house, similar to what we have seen on Main Street, which is what the new rules going forward are saying we don't want to see.
Or the 2 that are there are grandfathered then?
The 2 that are there. Not sure what you're
There's
talking.
2 curb.
Well, the,
driveways.
half
There's
rounds,
actually 3 in a row.
half rounds, many of them, perhaps not all of them, Shirley, but I know, of at least 2 that have a permit from the state of Connecticut due to the width of their frontage. That is something that is allowed.
You
We
know
can
which
have.
3 I'm talking about. The 3 that go up from Russell Avenue.
I do. They've probably been there for many years. I don't know if there's a permit. We can check, but I don't know that there's a permit.
Yeah, they've been there forever.
Forever.
So they had to be grandfathered, I think.
I don't know if I'd use the word grandfather. I don't know what the state term is, because I don't know that they do, so I'm careful to say that, not to say, to like.
The only other thing, Susan, I'd like to
Yeah.
bring up is, on Courtney Lane, I noticed on the planning and zoning agenda, they, for tomorrow, have an 824 application for
Yes.
referral from us to them for their opinion.
Yes.
And then we'll make our decision on whether to accept the road or not after their decision. But the land records reflect that we've already transferred the land. Hang on.
I'm sorry, I'm hearing.
Okay.
some-
Sorry, yeah.
The land records already reflect that we've transferred the land into our name, and I basically, I guess what I'm asking is, we needed an opinion from the town attorney, like, what would happen if this commission didn't accept the road? We've now already put the land in our name.
Well, that, as you know, because you're very aware of it, there was a zoning enforcement action on the owner of that property, and he had the bond called, so we had, in order to call the bond, there were certain legal steps we had to take, which I think you're familiar with, and we did proceed legally as we had to, but we have to also accept the road itself to be added to our list of acceptable roads. So in terms of the ownership of the land underneath the road, yes, the town acquired that due to the zoning enforcement action and other legal actions that had to occur. But the road itself, in terms of the amount of asphalt, the amount of drainage, the signage, and the appropriate building of that road has not been approved yet. And that's what is in the 824, and will come to this board for approval and acceptance going forward. As of this point, I don't believe, there hasn't been any snow, so I don't think we'll plow.
But an just for the record, an 824 also requires any time you get land. It doesn't, it's not specific to roads, it's specific to leases, selling, buying land. And I believe there was consideration of $1, and earlier you said there's no money exchanged on the Hubby for Hire. Just for the record, there will be $1. State law requires $1 transfer, and I believe we did the same on the Courtney Lane property, but we're now in a position where we've acquired land prior to an 824, and that, so basically I want the town attorney to weigh in, and for the record, I have other involvement with an 824. My question is specific to Courtney Lane, and how we ended up with title, which the 824 specific, you can't acquire land. I'm just curious how we.
If you're asking for full information, an agenda item on it, we certainly can do that. It was a zoning enforcement action that was carefully monitored and followed by our town attorney. And in order to protect the citizens of the town, and particularly those that live there, we had to take certain actions. And I know that you were involved with it because I talked with you about it when this was occurring. But I don't have the information with me tonight. I certainly can bring more information for you. But I can assure you it was brought forward utilizing our town attorney and the appropriate measures that had to be taken. It involved more than the road. It involved the excavation work that was being done illegally, and it involved, as I said earlier, the calling of a bond. So while there are always rules that we follow, there's also additional circumstances that we have to accommodate, and that is why we rely upon our town attorney to assist us with these things. And that was a very complicated matter, and I know that I've talked with you about it. Be happy to talk some more about it. I just don't have all the information with me in my file here tonight.
Yeah, like I said, I just want to make sure we, even with the town attorney's advice, people make mistakes. The land is transferred in our name in the 820 Connecticut State Statute 824 is very clear, and I'm just curious now, how do we
I'm not going
proceed?
to acknowledge that the town made a mistake until we consult with our town attorney, so I can't answer you tonight, but I'd be happy to look into it.
Thank you.
In detail, I have talked with you about it in the Okay, I put in your packets, and I don't want to keep you much longer. I know everyone has commitments tonight. But in terms of policy discussion, I did put in your packets for your review. I said I had gone through some other towns and their methods for their policies on fixing real property assessments. So I gave you the last iteration, which is 63016 of the towns, and I provided to you one that was similar to another Connecticut town, wherein there is eligibility associated with Connecticut General Statute, Section 12-65B, and also a suggested improvement, cost of improvements per lot tax abatement schedule. Years 1, 2, 3, 100% of property value. Year 4, 80, 5, 60, 6, 40%, year 7, 20%. And if improvements cost between $500,000 and 2.99 million, that be 100% of the property value, and there's no other suggested abatement below that. So it's for your perusal and your interest going forward. I thought it was important. I hope we have other applications for tax abatements, and I thought this would be helpful.
Are you going to put that on as an item for discussion?
If you would like me to, I certainly could.
I would.
And if you look at some of the research from other towns, I think you find it interesting to see what their policies are. Just put in tax abatement program policy, Connecticut, and you'll see a lot of other examples. And it's sometimes helpful when applicants know what you're going to typically approve. But this board makes those determinations, no one else. I have nothing on revisions to the ethics ordinance, and I have nothing at this point on the sidewalk revision. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session. It will not be very long. The topic of land acquisition, just some updates for the selectmen. Is there a motion to go into executive session for the topic of land acquisition? There will be no one else here except us.
I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah,
second it.
motion made by whom? Mike?
Mike.
Seconded by Ben.
Yep.
And we'll take a brief recess, or brief pause, I should say, while the room clears.
I'm always in trouble.
You ate all the chocolate and you